So welcome everyone. I am here with my bestie, Sahara Rose. I'm Cassandra Bodzak, for those of you who are not listening to this on Divine Downloads.
And I
Sahara
am
has
Sahara
been,
Rose. Yes, I'm Sahara Rose. I'm the host of the Highest Self podcast, and we are so excited to dive into today's not an episode, not an interview, but really just like a conversation between two girls who are trying to really understand what's happening in 2020 on a spiritual level, who are on our own, spiritual growth journeys, who are spiritual teachers, and knowing how many people this year need the support and need someone that they can talk to about all of the different avenues that are happening simultaneously. So this episode is really a conversation that you're our third bestie. Welcome to the crew. And we're just going
welcome.
to riff on the spiritual lessons of 2020.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did a podcast actually on Divine Downloads earlier at the start of 2020 as we were going into it, kind of chatting just about the same things that me and Tara voice note each over back and forth during the day. And I had such a tremendous reaction towards it. So many people emailed me and DM me and said how much they love just listening in on the two of us talking about it and feeling like they were a part of that conversation and kind of getting to be like a little fly on the wall for our conversation. And as you know, the year is coming to a close. And I think a big thing that so many of us, especially in the conscious spiritual community, will be doing more than ever this year will be reflecting on the lessons that we learned and how much growth and how much evolution and all the things that changed in 2020. So me and Sahara thought it'd be fun to just start hit recording and do a podcast double feature to talk about for, personally for us, what are the big lessons we're walking away from 2020 with. So
Mm.
you wanna hit it off first, Sahara? What's one of the lessons that you feel like you learned this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest lesson, and this is just the most obvious one, but it's one that really can't be repeated enough, is you can plan a pretty picnic, but you can't predict the weather. Like bringing it back to Outcast, like truer words have not been spoken. Like I remember before this year, I was speaking at this Mind Body Green event in New York, like in October, and I was like, 2020 is going to be the year, 2020 vision. Everyone was like, yeah. And like, everyone was so excited about this year. I had never seen such excitement for a year in the history of my life. And we've lived through like Y2K. It was like 2020. Everyone was like, shit's going to pop off. And it's kind of funny to look back at it because it's like, oh, you humans, like, sometimes I look back at it, even a picture of me like a year ago. I'm like, you don't know what's about to go down. And not that this year, by the way, I'll talk about this has been the best year of my life, despite everything happening. It has still been the best year of my life. And it has been totally, totally different than any type of year that any one of us could have planned for. So I think the biggest lesson overall for the collective is you can try to plan, you can try to control, you can try to put your Q1 to Q4 goals down, and life is going to happen. And really your power, your control comes into how you respond to what's happening to the world around you. That is the only thing you can really control.
Absolutely. That's like the quote, we make plans and God laughs. And I think that was one of the ones I wrote down as my biggest lessons too, was like, I think uncertainty has always existed. It's always been part of life and the existence. But this year, we really tasted it really palpably, and it became really real for us. And the kind of funny thing, at least I choose to laugh about it, is that it's always been like this in a way, right? Like life has always been unpredictable. We've never, there's that Alanis Morissette song that she talks about, like, that Tuesday phone call that brings you to your knees, right? Like we've all kind of had those moments where an email or a phone call changes our life, right? For good or for bad, right? We've all had those moments where, something unpredictable happens and we have to rise above. And 2020 was just kind of like a year that you were not going to get through without learning that lesson.
Mhm.
You just had to really sit in, who am I in the face of uncertainty? And I think that's what we learned we learned, how do we react in the face of uncertainty? And how comfortable are we with moving forward in the face of uncertainty? Like thinking, like you were saying, like it was the best year of your life, but in a way you couldn't have predicted it, right? It was because of how you kind of rolled with the punches and how you innovated. And I think that was like, this was a year that I think early on I saw, and I don't even remember if we touched on this in our first episode, but that you either were going to pull back and stay small and be scared and kind of make your world smaller by it and make it safer, or you were going to say, you know what, there is so much uncertainty, so like F it, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And like, how can I show up now with what I know now? And so yeah, I think that's a big thing, and I think it's made us all collectively, no matter where in 2020 you learned that lesson, I'm sure you learned it somewhere. And now moving into 2021, I think it's making all of us stronger and all of us more equipped for whatever life throws our way.
100%. I do remember us talking about how at the beginning, when quarantine first started, there was the message of use this as your chance to write your dream book, to get your business off the ground, to do all the things. And then there were the people like, stop trying to pressure people to perform and achieve during this time. Take this time to nap, rest, like cry, feel all of your emotions. And like, it was interesting because both sides were quite loud. You would have one person like, write your screenplay, and the other person like, stop telling us to do that. And I think that no one expected it to go as long as it has. The fact that we're still in a quarantine, almost a year later, no one could have predicted that. So it showed us who we really are. It showed us how we cope with trauma and how we cope with distress. Are you that person that hunkers down and just tries to like ride it out? Or are you that person that actually gets activated by, a little bit of risk, and that gets you really going? So it really shows us who we are, and it shows us our resilience. Because when I think of like that Tuesday morning phone call, I don't want that fucking Tuesday phone call. Like, my initial fear is like, Alanis, don't come my way with that phone call.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of fear. However, I've survived all of that. We've survived this. If someone were to tell us, like, back in March when all of this was starting, like, by the way, you guys are going to still be in quarantine, like in Christmas, like, we would have maybe lost it. We would have gone crazy. I mean, I remember even in June thinking, imagine if we had known it was going to last 3 months. Like, I definitely didn't think it was going to go even through the summer. So even though if we had known, it would have felt so overwhelming, like we wouldn't be able to handle it. We have become so resilient. Like, we don't think twice about like wearing a mask or getting a test or whatever it is. It's just like a normal part of life. So there's the beauty in that of like, we humans can survive anything. That's how we've made it so far. And there's a tinge of fear of that, of like, look how easily we can be conditioned to take anything and just accept it as normal. So you can, and one thing that I think this year has also shown us is the multidimensionality of all things. How one thing such as wearing a mask can be so controversial. One thing such as a test or a vaccine or whatever it is can have so many different sides to it. So it has shown us our differences as a country, as a world, and also our similarities of how we all really want what's best for the whole, and the information that we've received based off of our algorithms, our newsfeed, our news channels are going to inform us of different ways of doing so.
Oh yes, two things I have to add to that. The first thing is around, like, we had no idea how long this was going to go. And I think, going back to like those, like in the beginning of quarantine, where literally everybody and their brother was trying to give you your prescription for what you should be doing during quarantine, and whatever it was, like clean your house or take a nap or whatever it was. And really realizing this year, and then even with all the other subjects you said too, which I'll get into a little bit as well, how important it is to have our own sovereignty of mind more than ever, and how important it is to really be connected to your own intuition and your own individual path. Because I remember it was funny because on some people were on the side of really wanting to rest and um and then feeling like bad because people were telling them to write their book or whatever, right? I was kind of on the other side, right? I was feeling really enthused, inspired, energized. I actually made like I hit like great numbers, in this year in quarantine, right? I felt so like my work is needed more than ever. Like people are taking like the more digital, spiritual stuff more than ever now, right? And so to me, when I was getting all those rest messages, I'm at the place with my spiritual practice in a way where I was like, okay, that doesn't feel right for me, right? Like when I want to rest, I'll rest.
Mhm.
But I think it's really important when you're in those spaces to be like, okay, all these people are sharing the what's coming up for them,
Mhm.
right? The people that need to rest are probably sharing the rest message. The people that are excited and inspired might be sharing that message. And that's great. And I don't think there's anything wrong with anyone sharing whatever. It's that we need to have that filter to say, okay, great, Sahara is saying rest and Cass is saying write a book or whatever. I know we're both pretty much write a book people. but
I definitely didn't rest this quarantine.
no, no. But, there's nothing inherently wrong with that message,
Yeah.
right? It's just kind of knowing, does that work for me? And does that make sense for me? And the same thing goes with all this other stuff. We've seen such multidimensionality of opinions and conspiracy theories and masks and vaccines and political stuff. And one of the things I wrote down is that, acceptance around people that we love and their opinions has been a huge lesson for me
Mhm.
this quarantine this year, because I have had, really close friends and loved ones that believe things I don't believe,
Mhm.
right? And the question has been, or the lesson has been, can I love and can I accept them where they're at?
Mhm.
And I think again it goes back to the same thing. It's like I've gotten to this point now where that's a yes. And it was harder at certain points because I was like, okay. And I think it's taken a lot of different skills around boundaries and stuff, but also being able to fully witness someone in their beliefs and what's true for them and what they feel really passionate or committed to, or their logic or their news feed is telling them,
Mhm.
and being able to be really in my own energetic sovereignty and be like, okay, right now in this moment, that doesn't ring true for me.
Mhm.
I don't know if maybe in a year from now, I'll something else will happen and maybe it will. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know if in a year from now that person something else might happen and they might think what I think now,
Mhm.
right? I think we've also been through the roller coaster of exploring different things that we were believing in,
Mhm.
right? Which has been, a normal, natural part of the journey. So I think 2020, hopefully, for a lot of people, but I know for myself, has been around how can I hold those loved ones that have different beliefs than me and navigate those relationships with all of the polarization and the multidimensionality that's going on this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year will go down in history as the year of cancel culture. You
Oh
know,
my
we
gosh. Yeah.
really saw the great rise of that, of what collective groupthink can do, and modern day witch hunt. You
I've
know,
never felt so much modern day witch hunt
yeah,
vibes than this year. Like
it
so many
was,
terrifying past life feelings.
and, we both coach women all the time to speak their truth and to like show up in their power and their gift and share their magic with the world. And this was definitely the scariest year to do so because of how quick people were to take one thing they don't like about you, which could actually be something you did wrong, or could just be a difference of opinion, and create essentially this like groupthink movement to slander you and to tear you down. And in the witnessing of who this really happened to, was it happening to like legitimate like Ku Klux Klan members and like the like horrible like Republican people who are trying to make abortion illegal for all? No, it was not happening to them. It was happening to normal women by other women. And I think that for me was like a huge, like my nervous system was definitely the most out of whack in June because, the George Floyd murder, which was, I think, the most traumatic, honestly, the most traumatic event of this year. But then what followed that, which was this like almost like very, very quick tear down. And we talked about this, I think, on another episode that we did together. And I think everyone was in the situation that they haven't been in before of like this really tragic death happened and no one knew how to respond. So some of us, again, like coronavirus, are quick to respond. I'm someone who's quick to respond. I'm like, I'm a very politically active person. However, not everyone is like that. Not everyone is even trained in that or knows about that or feels comfortable to immediately speak about something right after it happened. However, the way that people reacted to that, silence is violence, you must be a racist. And I saw the tear down of so many women who, most likely were afraid and didn't speak up because they didn't know what to say. And people trying to take down their entire careers. And that was really sad to see as a woman.
Yeah, I think that this was a scary AF year to be a female leader or
Mhm.
to be someone that was in the public eye at all. And I think it also probably made a lot of people that perhaps were thinking about stepping up into the public eye or stepping up to be a leader or coach or something like that, second guess it a little bit
Mhm.
more or really own the full breadth of what comes with that, because a lot of times it's so easy to see the positive things, and you don't see sometimes the DMs or the the comments that we have to deal with. And how I remember I made a post this year about Breonna Taylor, which I thought, like, what could be wrong about this, and I still felt really firmly about what I wrote in the post. And I had people reach out to me that were pretty much, let's just say, did not agree that it was a tragedy,
Mhm.
right? And it, like, I had like I was like crying, and I was just like my head wanted to explode, right? Just around like, wow, there are people that really feel this way.
Mhm.
And also, people that are violently attacking who I am because I shared how I felt about it.
Mhm.
Right. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely a year where it made you really like sit in, like, who am I as a leader? And I think it was really, it's interesting because I was talking to one of my best friends. Casey is like such a human design dork, nerd, whatever. She like loves it. And she was actually telling me in human design that there are different, in your profile, there are different people that are meant to kind of address worldly issues and
Mm.
certain people that are not. Right. And when she
Interesting.
was telling me this, I was like, this is so fascinating, because I believe that on a core level, right? Like, there are certain people that are naturally drawn to being more political, to kind of having their voice and kind of these things. And there are other people, let's say, whatever, Sally, who like makes a mean cupcake and is awesome at decorating cupcakes, that maybe doesn't want to get involved in talking about political stuff and what's going on in the news. And this year, it almost made that wrong. Like, if you had a Facebook or an Instagram or anything, didn't matter if it was for your wood carving business, like, you were like demanded upon to have an opinion on things, which I think led to a lot of opinions, and sometimes opinions from people that felt kind of forced in a way to give an opinion.
Totally. And I think this was the year of learning sovereignty because on the internet there are millions upon millions of perspectives. So when you're trying to be told what to do, you're going to act one way and then someone else is not going to like it. Then you're going to act another way and then someone else is going to like it. And then what the feedback was, everyone was like, I feel like I keep getting it wrong. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm posting the black square. Oh, now I ruined this day because I posted the black square. And now it's this, and now silence is violence. Well, now it's performative activism, and now I'm sharing, but I should be giving Black people a voice. Well, now I'm not sharing enough, and it should be coming from me. And like people's minds were spinning and going crazy. And what was happening was then they felt like, screw it, I'm not going to do this because everything I do I'm being criticized for or hated on. But also people really feeling strongly to stand up for this very important cause in this moment in history. So I think, and we still don't have a clear answer on like what activism through social media can really look like. I feel like honestly what happened were a lot of people just got burnt out and confused and kind of just stepped away. Whereas there is such great power, like in what we were creating in June, of like sharing the different protests and sharing what was really happening behind the scenes and giving a voice and videos to police brutality in a way that has never been shown before. And I think the sensitivity around it, got to us. We shouldn't be as sensitive as we are, and on the other side of that, realizing that everyone's a human. So it comes back to this multidimensionality of this year that, in Gene Keys as well, we just entered a 7-year period of collective chaos. So
Yep.
we entered this period in 2020. It's still 2027. The first half is going to be more of the destruction of, judicial systems, medical systems, everything that is not serving us. And then the second half is going to be on the creation of what we do want to build. So by 2027, we're fully immersed into the new paradigm. Now, within that collective shift, we are different volunteers. So, like, we are definitely here to build the new. We're here to, like, while everyone's tearing down the old, we are hunkering down and, like, here are the new ways you can relate to yourself. Here are the new forms of education, wellness, etc. And I think that a lot more people are going to realize that they are also on that creation team, but because they're not really seeing people creating, they're more seeing like, shit, I should be destroying, I should be criticizing, and that's needed, but it's not everyone's role. So I think we're going to learn from this more and more. The way that activism and change can really come about is by all of us really being in our unique archetypes.
Yeah, for sure. Being in, and that's, it's so true. They actually, yeah, they call it the Great Change in Gene Keys, and it's a collective shift from victimhood into empowerment that's happening in these 7 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're like releasing that like victim consciousness and that disempowered energy that's circulating on the planet.
Well, even that word victim, too, that's a word to talk about now in 2020. This has become a very triggering word.
Yep. Exactly, right? And it kind of has to, right? It kind of
Yeah.
has to, so that we can heal our wounds around that word,
Hmm.
right? And I think there is something that each and every one of us, can look at and see maybe where we were a victim, or we would say we were a victim in our lives, right? A lot of us have um, different traumas that we've withstood and different things in our own stories. And seeing how we can use that. It's funny, I just finished reading Man's Search for Meaning for the second time, which is Viktor Frankl. It's his book. He's a therapist that was in the Holocaust, in the concentration camps, a Jew that was in the camps, but they put him into service as a doctor. But anyway, he talks about the use of purpose and meaning through suffering,
Mm.
right? And it was, it made me think a lot about 2020, right? Is how it doesn't mean that we have to deny or diminish or, sweep under the rug the suffering that we've incurred,
Mhm.
right? But it's like if we can derive purpose and meaning and let that empower us, then now we've alchemized, right? We've shifted out of victimhood, but we haven't negated our experience, right? Our experience is our experience, but we can now transmute that into purpose and meaning for what we're to create moving forward. So I do think that there's a lot of people that that's their, first of all, it's all of our soul's mission in
Mhm.
different ways, right? There's a lot of people that have specific suffering around things we're seeing publicly that are absolutely meant to use that as fuel to create something new and beautiful in the world and be the guiding light for the change. And I think especially the people that are listening to our podcast, and I know this has been a theme with literally all of my clients this year, they've been like, literally word for word, it happens at some point during our journey where they'll be like, but no one's ever done this before. And I'm like, that's exactly it. we're we're this generation of collective, right? This conscious collective, people that are listening to this podcast that follow us, right? That are the bringers of the new,
Mhm.
right? That are meant to be doing things and innovating and doing things in a way that they've never done it before. And I think in a lot of ways, some of that cancel culture or that criticism or kind of the fire that we have had to walk through this year, um, is an initiation of sorts, right? It's an initiation for us to really stand in our mission and
Mm.
our purpose and our courage to say, hey, you know, you can't burn me again. Right? Like I'm gonna keep prevailing, and this matters so much to me. And to have kind of the, the boldness and the courage that it takes to say, hey, no one's ever done it this way before,
Mm.
right? But I'm gonna do it this way, right? I'm gonna be the one that, even like your latest book, Discover Your Dharma, right? I'm gonna take this ancient concept and I'm gonna put like my authentic Sahara spin on it, right? And boldly share it in that way. Um, and so many of my clients that are like kind of entering in, I have a lot of clients right now that are kind of entering in more historically male dominated fields, right? And they're all young women, right? And saying, well, I don't have any role models that aren't men that are doing it in a way that I don't resonate with, right? And realizing that it's time to be our own role models. And I think that's part of this great change, is saying we're not going to look up to patriarchal role models anymore, and whether they're male or female, right? The ways of an older establishment, or the Piscean, as we're also moving into the Aquarian age officially this year. And we have to be the new role models. We have to be I always say, like, your role model is you 2.0.
Mhm. 100%. I think that this is definitely the year that we realize that this is why we were born. Like if you were a little bit confused about your purpose, you weren't sure if you were really needed, just like look out your window and you will see that whatever gifts that you have, whether it is music or speaking or cooking or setting up a beautiful home, is so needed right now. And I think that it has been a huge initiation and call to action for a lot of people of like, don't waste time anymore. Get out of your story, get out of your own way, get your message out into the world. And a shaking up, because I think so many people were playing small. So many people were stuck in the monotony, stuck in doing things exactly how they have been done. That honestly, the only way that we could have made the changes that we made this year is if it wasn't for something so big. And in a way, I actually think that it's going to go on for however long it needs to go on for until all of the changes are made. So the longer people take to realize that they are the creatrix of their own reality and that we're basically the wizards here to create heaven on earth, the longer it takes for us to create this, the quarantines can go on forever. But guess what? When you're already living in that 5D consciousness, which is living from the heart, living from the soul, living from your dharma, your divine self, whatever it is that you want to call it, like we've been sharing, this has still actually been the best year ever. And some people might say, oh, that is privilege to say that it's the best year ever. My whole family had coronavirus. Like I come from a family of refugees, political prisoners, immigrants, child marriage, like all of the things. I could definitely create a sob story for myself. And my husband lost his job. Like it definitely hasn't been easy. And I have chosen to take everything that has come from this year and use it to my best advantage of, hey, my husband lost his job. So we get to move now. Where do we want to move to? What a great start, or my grandmother died. No one could go to her funeral because of COVID. How can I commemorate her in a different way? How can I bring her more into my life and use her message more? Thinking that my father might get COVID and die because my mother had it really bad, and to this day doesn't have her smell back. And how can I further heal my lineage and now do healing work that maybe I wouldn't have even done in this lifetime if it wasn't for those situations? So when I say best year ever, I don't mean everything has been easy peasy, that I haven't done a lot of crying this year and stressing and figuring it out. It means every single obstacle thrown my way, I have alchemized. And that's what magic really is. That's what, when we talk about creating things in your cauldron. Your cauldron is not meant to be empty. It's not meant to just, only have beautiful daffodils in it. It's meant to have all sorts of medicine and potion and ancestors and past lives and trauma and whatever it is that you have in your cauldron. And how do I churn that and churn that and churn that and add a little bit of what I want to add to it, which is my own passion and zest and way of being, and create that into the life that I want to live. And I see this year as the year that people made decisions that would have taken them years or decades to make. It happened so rapidly just in this year. So it's such a great lesson that if you want to make a shift in your year, whether it's leaving your job or starting a new relationship or moving across the country or whatever it is that you want to do, it doesn't have to stay on your checklist forever. It's just literally in your own mind, and you get to do it right now. And some of us learn through breakdowns. Some of us learn through obstacles. Some of us need to keep feeling pain, pain, pain in order to grow and shift and change. However, when you realize that you can actually change that narrative for yourself and you don't have to get to the rock bottom to learn anymore, which I think people are now awakening to, they're able to be like, things feel a little bit off and I'm going to make that change anyways. I'm not going to wait until it becomes this huge, like tumultuous situation in my life. I'm going to be more adaptable to things. And now, being in a second lockdown, I feel like no one's even stressing it anymore, which shows how quick we still are. Because the first one, we were all having mental breakdowns. That it's like, imagine if everything in life you could be so adaptable, flip it into you on the other side living your best life imaginable.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting. I want you to talk a little bit more about that because I know one of the big things that happened this year was you moving to Miami. And I know just for being your friend that this is not like out of the blue. Like, this has been something that's been like kind of in your sphere of moving for a
Mhm.
minute. But, combined with Stephen losing his job and that shifting because of how his career was so like in person centric, how did you navigate? I'm curious, for everyone else as well. you to your, kind of movement from, okay, Steven's job is struggling, to the possibility of, okay, let's look at the bright side of this rainbow and we can move. How was that transition? Were there things that you had to do to kind of alchemize that gold?
Mhm. Like we all thought that COVID would be like a 2 week thing, 1 month thing, 2 month thing, and it's still happening. And my husband works in the music industry, specifically managing, DJs and producers who perform at big music festivals like Coachella and Ultra and EDC. And these are like 100,000 plus people festivals, which are going to be the last thing that comes back. So we had to, at first it was like, okay, Coachella is going to get postponed until October, and then it's next October. Now it's just sort of like, we don't know if music festivals are going to come back, or, this is like a far, far away possibility. And that's his work. And not just his work, many, many people who work in the music industry. And my heart really does go out for everyone working in there because it is such a passion that people have for music. And it is such a travesty, too, that music festivals and concerts are at this point not a part of our lives. And we looked at, okay, well, now your office is closed. Well, now you can't pay the rent for your office anymore. So you probably shouldn't have it anymore. Well, now you have to lay off everyone here. Like, these are hard decisions. And these are, not happy conversations to have either. So I don't want people to think it's just like some people have it figured out and not. However, this is how we alchemized it. So we were able to see, so you don't have an office anymore, you don't have a team anymore, you're back to working at home. You're not even sure if your work is going to make money anymore. So we don't need to really be in LA for anything, considering I've been working online and you now don't have any reason to be here. We're not sure what's going to happen with your job. We've always been interested in, not just Miami. There were, Bali we were considering, Hawaii we were considering, different places, but those other places weren't even a possibility at that time either. Like Hawaii and Bali were not accessible because of the lockdown. So Miami was kind of the only option that even could happen. But I had so many fears of leaving my community, like leaving my friends. I'm someone who community really matters to me. I was always having like rituals at my house and having people over, that I was also really afraid of making the wrong decision too. So it was a grapple, like months and months of like, should we do it? Should we not? Should we do it? Should we not? But I know that every time I've put myself in a new situation, whether it's moving to a new place or trying something new, I've always learned and I've always expanded and I've always grown. So we visited and I loved it, and I had hesitations too. But I figured, you know what, this next year is going to go by anyways. And I don't even know. I know how exactly it's going to play out with me staying in this apartment. It's going to be me continuing to, take my lap around this little lawn area, like hanging out at the same place, eating my same food, doing the exact same thing. Or there could be a new adventure waiting for me on the other side. And I don't know what that could look like, but I know I'm going to learn more about myself and I'm going to grow. And this is actually the perfect time to do it because we have no reason to be here. So we decided to go for it. And I'm so, so, so grateful that we did. Like energetically, well, first of all, I'm in Atlantis now. So it feels very Atlantean of expansion and growth and innovation. Like it definitely doesn't feel like retired in Florida vibes, which I thought it would be. But I share this because so many people have lost their jobs right now. This is and work is maybe permanently going to shift online for a lot of people. So take this as a blessing. Take this as, if I could live in any environment in the world, where would I want to live? What elements really support me? For me, it's the water. I love having the water. I love the humid air because I am very vata, so I tend to get like dry and cold easily. So the warm humidity, that feels really nourishing for my body, to be able to just go downstairs and like walk on the beach and see the turquoise blue waters and be able to swim in there. That's what my soul really needs. And I think that this quarantine really taught us too, to live in a place that you don't feel like you need a vacation from. Because before, we could, you could live anywhere and be traveling on a plane every month if you wanted to. However, now it's sort of like where you are, you're really there. So do you love the mountains? This is your opportunity to move there. Have you always wanted to live in Canada? Like, why not now? Do you love Tulum? So many people are creating community there. And I'm actually seeing so much more movement and migration happening. And I think that it's really important because, especially as spiritual people, we're setting the grid. We're actually going to places that there isn't typically a spiritual community. And we're bringing that over to the small towns, or the cities that tend to not be super spiritual, etc. And not only is this helping on a physical level of, there's going to be more yoga classes there and vegan restaurants and all of that, but on an energetic level as well. If we have all the spiritual people like in LA and maybe some in New York, and like that's it, well, first of all, we're not going to be spreading the knowledge to the people that we want to spread it to. We're just going to be passing it around in this circle. But energetically, if you think about it as like, those like over the top cameras they take of like the world at night that have like the lights, and you can see in the big city there's so many lights there. Then you see in like Wyoming, you're like, where's the light? Well, we figuratively are those lights. So now, because of COVID and what has happened, we're spreading, spread the light in your words. We literally are spreading the light to all of the places that have maybe never seen the light of day, and able to set that field and set that vibration, which begins with the types of foods we buy, the choices we make, but then also even the frequency of the place. And I see kind of the end of cities. Like before, you kind of had to like move to the city to make it, because you had to go in person to meetings and events, and be around New York to make it, or whatever it was. And now, because everything's online, including events, etc., you can quote unquote make it in the forest or in the jungle or whatever it is you want to be. And I think that there's going to be such beauty in the, I don't feel so alone anymore, because there's going to be people just like you all over.
I love that. When this started and so many of my close girlfriends, including you, all moved to different places. And I had this moment where I was like, oh my God, like everyone's gone. And I saw in my meditation later that day, literally exactly what you said. I saw like these little lights, like going to their corners and like kind of spreading out to all these different places, and how all of us, it's true. And I had felt this way about the spiritual community um for a while, that it was kind of like redundant in a way. Like when you were like, and of course we're like in all those groups, right? So I love all those groups, but it was the same thing. It was like you go to New York, you know your people, you go to LA, you know your people, and we're like our own little like posse. And it's true. It's like we need to be spread out. We need to engage in communities that don't have as many people, quote unquote, like us, right? And just our energetic vibration is going to shift that place. And also just who we are, right? Like I teach A Course in Miracles, and A Course in Miracles says that to be a teacher is to demonstrate, right? So we're all teachers, regardless of what your quote unquote profession is in A Course in Miracles terms. And so all of us are teachers of light. And we teach not by our Instagram posts or not by even our podcast. We teach by who we are, you know, who we show up as, whether we're picking up a tea at like the local cafe, or we're going shopping, or we're just walking our dog, right? Like our energy signature is making an imprint on that environment. And I definitely think, you know, for me it's been less dramatic, but as far as the perspective on our living situation has shifted tremendously this year as well, because you know we were about to buy a house actually before all of this happened, and all the banks kind of pulled out of jumbo mortgages when this started because of the mortgage forbearance, and they didn't want to give out large sums of money when they were not getting paid by a large sums of people. And so our plans kind of ricocheted, and of course me being me was like told my fiance like this is obviously divine, like there's a reason we're not allowed to buy a house now, and it's going to be okay because we need to get through whatever this is, because we're going to be different on the other side of it, and our priorities might be different and the market might be different, and we don't know. But I felt really strongly that it was heavily divinely held. And I'm so glad, because regardless of what the market for houses or whatever ends up looking like when we buy, we've fundamentally shifted what we want so much, because we went from being like, we want to live close to, we're in Orange County, so we wanted to live close to like the city center. There's like Newport and Corona del Mar, and they have these like super cute like, you know, restaurants and cafes and shops. And I'm a big walker, like I have a car, but I like to walk everywhere if I can. And I was like, I need to be able to walk everywhere. And we want the restaurants, and I want the cute little smoothie place, and be close to a yoga studio. And all the houses in an area like Orange County for that are astronomical and tiny, with like no land. So it's kind of like New York or LA, right? It's like the closer you are to the cool stuff, the smaller your place is going to be, which I'm sure is everywhere. But, you know, this year has been so grounding in realizing how much we want space, we want land, we don't care so much, right? Like, what does it matter, you know, how close we are to restaurants and stuff? Like if we want to go to them and that's a thing still in the future, we will drive to them, right? But we'd rather have like our home be a sanctuary. And I'm really glad we ended up finding a really beautiful place to live in this year, because it has made all the difference. Because both of us, I think, we are like wanderlusters, like we love traveling, and that's something I've missed so much. But it's been really even sitting with that and saying, like, okay, what was I receiving from travel? What was I receiving from travel that I can give to myself, you know, here? Right? What was, you know, whether it was the relaxation or the peacefulness, or, you know, like you said, an adventure, learning new things. You know, I've learned to like drive up to Tahoe, or, you know, have an adventure just by like exploring like a hike by my house, you know, finding like different ways to feed that part of me without needing to get on a plane all the time or needing to be somewhere. And in a lot of ways, one of the things that shifted for me a lot was I traveled so much. I didn't even realize how much I traveled until you pretty much couldn't travel. I was traveling like once a month at least for the past 5 years. And so I have never felt so grounded with all of this happening. And really, when you're grounded, it's like I've gotten a chance to really get into a routine and like a steadiness and like in a way that I'm like a ritual person, so I always have rituals, but there's been a groundedness to being like, oh, like when you go on a trip, you're always like, there's the lead up and like the lead back, and there's like the shifting, and it's been like really steady this year, which I think has also been a real gift to creation, right? To creation of, new projects and ideas and that, but also into like deep self discovery and really getting that time to like sit with myself and being like, how do I want my office to be? How do I want my home to feel? What do I want to shift? What are the parts of me that I was able to run from when things were busier? And how do I let me sit with them, let me heal them, let me show up for that work right now, because I'm not off like being distracted and doing all these exciting things.
Totally. I think that this is definitely the year to make your home your sanctuary and to create the life you don't need the vacation from. And so many more people this year like have been doing home redesigns and renovations and you know, I've realized how much it's worth paying extra for like the beautiful furniture or wall decoration or something like that that I'm going to look at every single day versus like traveling that you end up spending all of this money. And it's just like, I obviously love to travel still and I'm excited to do it again, but I realized how much money I would spend on this quick trip. And you don't think about it. You're like, oh, well, like hotels just cost that much. You got to eat the good food there. You got to, try the spa, like you could get the good taxi and just like all of this money that you would spend on like a week of your life that if you now I think of everything in furniture. I'm like, what could that get me in terms of like a carpet, And it's
That's a
made
really nice sectional. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. I am like $2,000. I could get a whole new sofa, leather,
Yeah.
So it really has, and honestly, I am really grateful for the age that I'm at in this quarantine because if I was like 21 years old and like in college and like fuck I have to move back home with my parents and like I'm trying to like hit the club every night and I can't do this anymore, like I think this whole experience would have been much harder on me, but again I think my soul chose, it knew this was going to happen and it chose to actually be with my partner at this time in the work that I'm in. And, so many of us have had these same conversations with yourself and Patrick. And like you guys got engaged literally in December, right before this all happened. And, imagine if this even happened 2 years ago, like you would have been single in this quarantine. Can you imagine? I mean, I know a lot of
I
people
have thought
aren't,
of
but
that.
it's so much, it makes it so much more difficult when you're alone. And I think whatever it is, our souls chose to be in this experience, whether it is being single with a partner, with your parents, whatever situation that you're in. And it's just made me really grateful for where I'm at right now because I have already felt like at a place that I'm like grounded. I kind of know what I'm doing and I could just fully focus on that. Whereas in, your college years, you're so still attached to the community and the extracurriculars and the social engagements that or even these high school kids right now, like how much of high school is like passing the note to the person at the desk next to you and like telling your friend that you like a boy and like that's gone for now and that it's sad, but I just have to know that it's going to give them a unique experience of, I was so excited to have a snow day. They got like a whole year of staying at home too. So whatever age you're in, whatever situation you're in, this was exactly what you needed to experience this as.
It reminds me of that Hafiz quote that says, "This was the place God circled on a map for you."
Yes.
And I feel that. I feel that so strongly because I have thought about that. I literally thought about that because we did get engaged like right before this all started. And I was with my partner 6 months before we got engaged. So it was relatively fast. And it went from being like single to very committed. And it felt very also divinely guided, obviously. But looking back and thinking, like, I did think about that a few times. I was like, what if I was like still in my Santa Monica apartment? Like, and you know what? I don't think like, I think at first when we entered quarantine, I was like, oh wow, this would like it would stink to be single right now and be dating, right? But now with my friends and my clients that are single, I've been telling them, and I firmly do believe this, I think there's a really epic opportunity for meeting your person right now. Because if you're open, right, if you're open to being on dating apps, if you're open to meeting someone over social media or Instagram or something like that, because you could be FaceTiming with them, right? I've been telling all my clients, like, have FaceTime happy hours, right? This is a great way. Famously, women often wonder, like, how long should I wait before we get intimate or before we kiss or make out or have sex or all this stuff? Like, guess what? You're on Zoom. There's no risk. You can have as many glasses of wine as you need to, right? You're sleeping alone tonight, right? And that's actually really nice because you have to build, I think, just like we were talking about this before the call, but certain things in life show you who your friends are, right? And I think this year definitely showed you who are the friends that are willing to have Zoom chats with you. We do like long voice memos back and forth in between our Zoom chats, and you know that I think reassured me. Like when people started moving in different directions, I knew right away the people I would talk to and it wouldn't matter at all, and the people that it might not, right? And I think this also would do that to romantic relationships, right? People that were really willing to like get to know you and show up in that way. You could meet someone, you could weed out people and meet someone really, really serious in a beautiful way this year. Just like I also believe that we were divinely meant to be in the situations we're at during this year as well, and our souls chose that. And trust me, like going into like moving in with someone and getting engaged and then quarantining with them, it was such a great working thing for our relationship. And I was actually joking with Patrick the other day because I was like, I had this moment. We just visited my brother in Maine, who just moved out to Maine because his job went remote and he no longer wanted to like live in Silicon Valley and have that life. And he loves it, living out in Portland, Maine. Like it's so nice and peaceful and relaxing. And we wanted to see him for Thanksgiving because I didn't want him to be alone, and that's a big deal for me. I don't know, I'm a very overprotective big sister, and I was so grateful to have a partner that was cool with that, right? That wanted to come with me and that understood how much that was a priority for me. And we both got our negative COVID test and wore our mask the whole time and like abided by all the guidelines. But this was truly like a year of your what do you call it, apocalypse buddies? Right? Like when you think about that, like we joke about that so much. Like, who are your, like, it's like a Tom Cruise movie and you have your four people. Like, who are you surviving the apocalypse with? Uh,
Especially at the beginning, I feel like everyone, like when it first happened, everyone was like, let's Zoom call. Like, and like everyone was like reaching out to like Zoom call each other because for some reason we're like, now we have all of this time to Zoom, even though we're all like stressing over the news and totally did not have a lot of time on our hands. And everyone was going live on Instagram like all the time. It was literally be like 20 people live on my Instagram. I was going live every day doing my dance things. But then I feel like when it kind of hit in of like, this isn't really going anywhere, it's like who are you actually staying in touch with? Because staying in touch is a commitment. It's
mhm,
time, it's energy, it's checking in, it's having that person on your mind, what they're going through, what they're moving through, holding space for them. So all of these people that you may have had in your life, it kind of made you realize, who are my more like, I see these friends when I'm out and we vibe when we're at the same dinner party, and that's what the relationship is like. And who are my people when I'm having a breakdown that I have in my life. And not a lot of people listening still don't have those friends. And the other opportunity, just like the opportunity is to find a great relationship, I met my own husband on Bumble and we were FaceTiming that first week, and I'm super grateful for that. But also, there's so many people who are really looking for genuine friendships now, because I think a lot of people have realized, like, I don't want these friends that I, see at this event and then we don't really keep in touch with anymore. People are really wanting deeply fulfilling relationships. So, there are even apps to find friends. We both have communities. I think finding a community that you align with is honestly the best way to make friends. But to put in that effort and to realize that to to have friends, you got to be a friend. And I think too, like it made you see who is going to put in that time, who is going to put in that effort. Like, how does this friendship feel? Is it mutual, you know? And
Yeah.
I think that really came to surface, especially when so much of communication has gone to audio, Zoom, etc. So you can actually feel that a lot more of like, does this person actually care about me, or are they just using me for advice all the time and never checking up on how I'm doing? So just like careers and all of these moves happened really quickly, I think friendships budded very quickly and dissolved very quickly as well.
Absolutely. And I think I love what you said. I think that's really important. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this that maybe lost some friends this year, not like physically, hopefully, but like lost those relationships. But and so if that's the case, I think it's like one, realizing that sometimes that's divine, right? Sometimes that's divine. Sometimes people just fall apart because they're not meant to continue on with you to that next chapter. And then the other like part of that is asking you, like, A Course in Miracles has this thing that I love about relationships. It says anything that you're feeling is missing in a relationship is what you're not giving. And I
Mm,
think it keeps you really honest because then you get really clear on like, am I checking in on them?
mhm,
Am I, and this it continues to be a year. And even as we move on to different years, sometimes I always tell my clients too, and this is a practice that I've developed over the years through dealing with my own, I started actually during when I was dealing with my disordered eating. Like one of the mechanisms I would have when I wanted to like go into like, negative body thoughts or, overeat or undereat or overexercise or whatever it was like reach out to a friend, but not reach out to a friend and like spill all my junk on them,
mm,
but reach out to a friend and just say, "Hey, Sahara, how's your day going?"
mhm.
Right? And just hear what's up for you. Because the second I'm asking what's up for you, I'm like out of me.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was like actually extra. Of course, it's okay with your friends to like ask for advice and whatever, share what's going on when things happen. But I often think of that as a great tool when you want to just shift your space. And you also, it's like a double whammy win because now you're showing up for your friend. And gosh, I feel like 2020 is this year where we have all kind of collectively had this understanding. And I'm so guilty of this with there's one friend in mind that I'm thinking of that, I kind of saw like she just got into a relationship, she's moving, she's got a lot of things going on for her. And so I just kind of assume like she's busy, right? Like she doesn't like need to deal with me and Zoom with me. Like she's got a lot on her plate right now. And obviously, luckily, like our friendship is such where as soon as I reached out and we talked, everything was fine. But it's so easy to fall into that mindset of right being like, oh, they're busy, oh, they're dealing with their own stuff, oh, I'm just dealing with my own stuff, oh, we'll talk eventually. Like, don't.
Mhm.
Because the second you reach out to someone, the second you kind of put that out and you guys connect, oftentimes you're just so glad you did, right? And even though it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm on Zoom all day, I remember one of my Miracle Mastermind clients, she was telling me, because we have Zoom weekly with each other, she was like, I was on Zoom calls all day for work, and there was a part of me that was almost like, "Ah, do I want to stay on Zoom for this one more call, which was our mastermind group?" And she was like, no, because I did, because this Zoom is the one all day that's for me, right? This is the Zoom that fills my cup up. And I think it's super easy to say that, especially for those people whose work has gone remote and they're like, oh my God, if I have to get on Zoom anymore, I just want to
Mhm.
shut the computer and like run and hide after my day. But realize that like that Zoom that you have with your girlfriend and having like a happy hour Zoom or like a tea Zoom or dinner Zoom, where that's the one that's going to fill your cup up.
And let's be
And
real, like, where are you gonna go? To the other TV screen, the phone screen? Like, you're like so Zoom fatigue. When are you Instagram fatigue yet? You know, it's like, what better that there's someone on the other side of the computer live wanting to talk to you and you can talk in real time. Like the fact that we're across the country having this conversation, I can see you nod and blink is such a fucking miracle that I think too, like we get to realize how lucky we are. We get to realize how lucky we are. We have the internet during this time. Imagine if this happened happened in the 80s or the 90s. Like, you would have been at home having to check out your local newspaper every day, afraid if it has coronavirus on it, and see what's the latest according to this one piece of newspaper with no contact except for your landline that one person in your family could use. So I feel like we, like, as humans do this, it's like, I think this comedian was talking about, it was like the first flight ever that had Wi-Fi on it.
Yeah.
And the Wi-Fi wasn't working. They're like, oh, the Wi-Fi never works on this flight. And it's like, this is the first flight with Wi-Fi on it. Instead of, what a miracle. I'm on an airplane flying in the sky to whatever destination I want. I don't have to like do anything. And there might be internet on here. So I feel like this year has taught us so much about how we think. Are we that person that goes to the negative? Are we that person that tends to be more positive? And how do we want to show up in the world? Do we want to, again, see it from the victim lens, see it from the, oh shit, all my friends want a Zoom call with me, poor me, or what a blessing, I have all of these people I get to connect with on Zoom?
Or none of my friends have asked me to Zoom call with me,
Yeah.
right? And focusing on that instead of being like, hey, I know I was in some of my friends, like the one to go first in that scenario, to be like, hey, maybe like when it started, being like, I don't know if this sounds corny, but I'm like losing my mind not seeing any of you. Like, can we Zoom and like have tea or something? And there were some people that were a little resistant to it at first, that were like, I'm not really a Zoom person or whatever. I'm an in-person person. Let's just like, and that's fine. Like, let's have a phone
Good luck.
call. Right. And I'm like, first of all, like, okay. And then they've all since converted, they've worn them down. And it's true. It's like, it's so priceless, especially with your friends or if you're dating someone or your family. I've been so grateful. My family's on the East Coast. Your family's on the, some of your family's on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, in Boston.
Um, and so I've been so grateful for that with them because I haven't really been able to see them. Right. I'm like grateful that I get to FaceTime with my grandma, even though she has like no idea what's going on with the phone. She's like, oh my God, I can see you.
Yeah.
But it
And
does, it makes such a difference.
totally. And I think that's another really important thing to touch on for this year is this has also been the year of family healing. I have seen every single person going through deep healing with their physical family, their ancestry, their lineage. It has been, I mean, I feel like ancestral healing is just like a mainstream word at this point, which is so amazing and so powerful. So I think that this has really been the year of when you're sitting in your home, you're sitting in your body, you're sitting in yourself, you're sitting in your ancestry, your lineage, what's around you. And I think also so many of us, when the holidays would come around, all of the articles were like how to like avoid awkward dinner conversations or how to handle you staying with your parents for a weekend and how to, have those conversations with people you don't want to have. And this year it wasn't that. This year it's like you were lucky if you got to see your family. And I think that we all really needed that awakening. Even for myself, I was definitely someone who would, you know, not feel very energized about spending a lot of time with my family because of our differences, but because of the healing that I have done with my family now, I genuinely feel desire to want to spend time with them, which has never been in my entire life. So the opportunity for us was to go under the carpet and clean up those webs. And what's that dust under there? And what are those conversations that we've needed to have for a really long time that have been long overdue? Or we didn't know how to start the conversation, or we didn't know what to say, or we didn't want to make a big deal over something, but it's really been bothering us and it's been the reason why we haven't been so close. Like, this has been the year to bring it up. And if you haven't yet, like, there's still time. We still got a month left now.
Yeah.
But,
It doesn't
but
end just because the year changes.
exactly. But you can still do it. But I really think that we needed to all collectively stop, drop, and roll and deal with our ancestors right now.
Oh, absolutely. And I had that same exact experience. Like, I think I really realized how much I took for granted.
Mhm.
Even though my family's on the East Coast, like I would never, I'm a friend to a plane. So I never saw that as a big deal. And the past couple of years, my brother was on the West Coast before he just moved. So oftentimes, for work reasons or whatever, he couldn't go back home. And I would just go spend holidays with him so that he wasn't alone. And I really realized this year how much I took for granted, like that there'd always be another time where I could go see them, or there'd always be like another, there'd always be another opportunity to go hang out with my grandma. And I've really had to sit with that. And like one of the hardest things I've had to sit with is the fact of, kind of like you had to experience, like my grandma's 85, she's going to be 86 on New Year's Eve. um and it scares me to think that I may not get to see her again, you know and I've had to really like sit with that, and actually sit with, and same thing for my parents are much younger, so I have more hope for that. But actually just sit with that, right? Sit with that, and trust that, as soon as that's possible. Like my parents, so the reason I can't see her is my parents won't let me. I said I'm willing to quarantine and test and do all of that. They just still don't feel safe with it. My grandma has nodules in her lungs from like cancer, and they just don't, they're just very, very scared for her right now. So I understand that we're FaceTiming, but I've had to sit with that. Like, if this is the part of the divine plan, like if this is what it has to be, then I have to respect my parents' wishes and her wishes at this time. And I have to respect that, and I have to take responsibility for, okay, how can I be at peace with this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And how can I show up in a way that I'm going to feel as complete as I can feel? Right.
Mm-hmm.
How can I call or FaceTime, or, same thing with my parents, right? It's like, okay, like my parents are totally, um, you know, not open to visitation right now, right? And so it's like kind of just accepting that that's where they're at with it. And even though that's hard with me, I have to respect that and understand that they're scared and they're in a different demographic than I am, and be with that, and show up in the way that I want to show up for that relationship, so that I also can feel peace
Mm-hmm.
about that.
I think it definitely, circling back to the first point of uncertainty, like my parents, like, were fortunate enough, they had COVID, so they have antibodies, and they got negative tests, so they came in and visited us here. And when they left, I was like, we might not ever see each other again. And that's the case every single time we've seen each other, but it really hit me. We just might not ever see each other again, and how important it is to tell the people that you love them, and how important it is to not hold the grudges anymore, or to not feel like it's worth having the conversation because you don't feel like dealing with it, or you don't know how to bring it up. Just do it now, because again, we just don't know what the future holds. And there's an immense sadness in that, and an immense freedom in it too, to really be you and show up the way that you want to right now in this moment.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good kind of place to full circle it, is that it's true. It's like the uncertainty of the fact that we don't know if we have tomorrow, or we don't know what a month looks like, or we don't know how long we have with our loved ones, has always been there through
Mhm.
all the ages of all the times. And we have lived in a collective privilege of getting to not be so present with that, right? Some of us are more present to it than others. Those of us that have had those kind of moments where maybe you lost a loved one unexpectedly, or dealing with certain things and that. But this year collectively has given all of us that, if anyone didn't have it,
Mhm.
um, that awareness of being like, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And whether that is, you don't know if you'll be able to go to the gym tomorrow, you don't know if you're going to be able to, you know, have a wedding. You don't know if, you're going to have to deliver a baby by yourself. You don't know if you're going to see your love, like, and I really do think that there's so much power in living from that place, and not letting it bring you into, obviously there, like you said, there's so much sadness with that, right? There's a lot of mourning that we have to do in the acceptance of uncertainty, right? And that's a necessary, like the crying and the feeling, that's like a necessary part of it. But then to get to the other side and think like, what am I going to do with this wild and precious day I have, this
Mhm.
amazing life I have, and what do I feel inspired and divinely guided to do today? Not what anyone else is telling me to do, because at the end of the day, if today is my last day, if it's the last week, if it's the last month, what you're gonna be the happiest with is the thing that you actually feel the most called to do,
Mhm.
regardless of what anyone else is telling you to do.
Mhm. I think this is the year that death gets to become our friend. And when we become friends with death, which is the inevitable for all of us, you get to experience the freedom that's on the other side of knowing that this is just an opportunity that we have here. And all of those little details that we stress about really, in the grand scheme of things, don't matter at all. And you're not going to regret not spending enough time on your emails, on your deathbed, or whatever it is. So, what a beautiful, like, this is what Tantra is all about. The more that you are aware of your own death, the freer and more liberated you become. And I think
Mm,
that in our society, death was such a never spoken about thing. It was like death and ghosts, like bad. Don't think about them. Don't talk about them. And now, because it's on the forefront of our minds, it's a daily conversation. We realize, am I, am I making the choices that I would be making knowing that I'm a mortal human? And that doesn't mean, like, I feel like when people think, oh, well, if it was my last day to live or my last year to live, I would just like be on roller coasters all day, or like, fucking around and doing things. But would you really? I really think the majority of us would be showing up, sharing our message, spreading our magic with the world, sharing our gifts, living our dharmas. Like, that is really what we would be doing if we knew how much time we have left. So to start just doing that now.
absolutely. Amen to that. You'd love harder, you live more, you shine brighter. And let that be the gift that 2020 gives all of us.
Yes. This was a
Thank you.
deep one.
Right? Thanks for doing this with me, love. This
Oh,
is so
it's
fun.
so much fun. And doing these podcasts like so invigorates me and energizes me. So if this was my last day, I had a good one.
Me too. I'm glad that we left this for
Yeah.
the world, our insights.
Yes.
And we'll put below, Sahara, as you probably know, has an amazing book coming out called Discover Your Dharma. And she's giving away tons of free goodies if you pre order it. So check out that link below. I also have some awesome free meditations for you, all about divinely designing your life. So if you're someone that's been itching to get into a consistent daily meditation practice and you want a little help, and you want to connect to your guides and your divine support squad every day and receive that guidance and see maybe what would you do if this was the last day, check out that below. It's totally free and my gift to you.
Thank you all so much for listening. We love you so much,
We
and
love you
can't
so
wait to
much.
connect with you on our 2021 prediction episode.
Yes, coming soon. 2021 predictions.